эти деньги, вот они
Вот
известны.
я и подвел деньги Михаила Ивановича 439 968.
Who are the most corrupt politicians in the world? The honest answer is we don't know, and we probably never will. We can know the most corrupt politicians ever to get caught. But the really smart cookies are the ones who truly know how to do corruption properly? Who knows? But it's amazing how many world leaders with access to unlimited government budgets, the nation's taxes, and perhaps the literal crown jewels of the nation, leave office remarkably well off. Did these leaders get their high position because of their brilliance? Is it more likely they got a helping hand or helped themselves? Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, brought down by the files from Panama. Nawaz Sharif, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, was identified in the Panama Papers leak of 2016. The leak revealed that Sharif and his family had offshore companies and properties in London, including luxurious apartments, which couldn't have been afforded on their modest means. The Panama Papers leak triggered a series of investigations and legal proceedings against him. In July 2017, the Supreme Court of Pakistan disqualified Nawaz Sharif from office as Prime Minister over corruption charges related to the Panama Papers. That a Pakistani senior government minister was corrupt was of little surprise. That he might face consequences for his actions was shocking. He was sentenced in 2018 to 10 years in prison in a corruption case related to luxury apartments in London. The conviction led to his arrest upon his return to Pakistan from the United Kingdom. However, Nawaz Sharif's supporters have maintained that the corruption charges against him are politically motivated and part of a larger power struggle within Pakistan's political establishment. They argue that the judiciary and military have been involved in efforts to undermine his political influence. Well, he didn't really face any consequences at all, as he has continued to lead his party Nawaz from the UK for years now, the UK having a very comfortable relationship with dirty money. There have been suggestions that these charges may have been politically motivated, but the Panama Papers were very, very public indeed.
Масштабы коррупции в России, оцениваемые экспертами 4 организаций, приблизительно одинаковые. В районе 30 миллиардов оценивается долларов.
Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, wants to be president of Ukraine and the rest of Europe. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has been dodged by allegations of corruption throughout his career. These allegations are part of his tensions with the Western alliance of the USA and Europe. One of the biggest cases of alleged corruption involving Vladimir Putin is the Magnitsky Act. Sergei Magnitsky, a Russian lawyer, uncovered a massive tax fraud scheme involving Russian officials and business people. He was arrested in 2008, and while in custody, he died under suspicious circumstances, with this being viewed as essentially murder by prison. The United States responded by passing the Magnitsky Act in 2012, which imposed sanctions on Russian officials involved in human rights abuses and corruption, and other European countries soon followed after. While Putin himself was not directly implicated in the case, it's hard not to see him as benefiting. One of the problems with accusing Putin of corruption is he's generally seen as less corrupt than his predecessor Boris Yeltsin, who sold priceless Soviet-era companies for maybe 1% of their value to his cronies. Putin is apparently more likely to charge 2% and disappear than anybody getting too greedy. This, by Russian standards of corruption, is as incorruptible as Elliot Ness of the Treasury Agency, but in a place as opaque as Russia, where Putin is at the center of all law enforcement and governance and is on a first-name basis with their leaders, who knows? Only there's no real explanation of how a KGB officer from a modest background is now a billionaire several times over and owns a Black Sea dacha that is worth almost $1 billion on its own. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index consistently ranks Russia as a country with a high level of perceived corruption. Putin and his government, of course, deny these allegations, but others wonder what Al Capone with atomic bombs would actually be like. Salman bin Abdulaziz, King of Saudi Arabia. In a country where black gold flows freely, isn't corruption inevitable? King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud of Saudi Arabia and his government have been dodged by accusations of corruption. Anti-bribery law. The anti-bribery law has been enacted in Saudi Arabia to combat corruption, but these laws are often seen as promoting an organized framework for bribery rather than outlawing it. Lack of transparency. Saudi Arabia has been accused of having a lack of transparency in government operations, including the allocation of public funds. But in a state without freedom of the press, democracy and senior posts can be allocated due to bloodlines. Then it can feel a little bit Game of Thrones with better weather. Royal family corruption. there have been allegations of corruption within the royal family, including the misuse of public funds and the awarding of contracts to family members. There are of course plenty of other corrupt world leaders. Indeed, in North Korea, the dear Kim Jong-un seems to be the only citizen who managed to get overweight, and in a supposedly equal workers' state inherited the whole country from his dad. But it's always worth asking about your leaders. How did that man or woman afford a second home, a private jet, and so many nice cars? For other stories of corruption and skullduggery in the halls of power, why not watch our next video?